Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So a lot of craziness going on, but The Flash is still on break. So this bonus video is going to be all about big storylines and villains I think they can do in the future. George R.R. Martin said this funny thing about superhero films that we've been seeing the last 5 to 10 years, is that the heroes always seem to fight villains that seem to have the exact same powers that they do. He was implying that it might be more creative to see the hero have to use his powers in an unusual way to defeat the villain who has some ability that isn't the exact mirror of his. So a really good example is Captain Cold. His cold gun has absolutely nothing to do with Speed Force. Now, as amazing as Wentworth Miller is as that character, he's a mid-level villain. Zoom right now, during Flash Season 2, is top tier, and I guess I should say spoiler warning for everything on Flash Season 2 so far. You take it one step above Zoom and you get to cosmic big bads. You're talking Darkseid, you're talking Anti-Monitor, which is why I think, because they just created the multiverse, one of the biggest stories they could possibly do, and probably one of the final stories, would draw from Crisis on Infinite Earths in the comics. Now, there are a couple really big reasons why they can't do that story right away, because one, we just learned about the multiverse, so they have to explore it, they have to tell the story of all these different Earths, and when you look at this picture here, this is way beyond the New 52. There are way more than 52 Earths here, so this is like pre-Crisis continuity if you're a big comic book fan. If you've never read Crisis on Infinite Earths, it's one of the most famous DC big event series of all time. It happened during the mid-80s, and it was intended to be this big summer event series, but the writers also used it to clean up a whole bunch of continuity problems between the Golden and the Silver Age of comics. There were so many versions of characters with so many backstories, it got way too confusing, so they're like, okay, we're gonna create this cosmic big bad who is gonna kill like half of these characters. The ones that survived were the characters with really popular comics, like Superman. So they use this Crisis event to rewrite everyone's backstory and say, okay, this is the new backstory for all these characters. All these other versions, they were killed off during this big event. They don't exist anymore. Near the end of Crisis, the big villain, the Anti-Monitor, created this giant antimatter cannon, and he was going to use it to destroy everything that was left. So Barry, in order to save them, ran so fast that he dismantled his machine. He went so fast that he just evaporated into nothingness, as if he went faster than he had ever gone before. Now, they didn't explain what happened to him till later. A couple years after Crisis, they retold the story of the death of Barry Allen about how he saved the positive matter universe by running so fast that his molecules just evaporated into nothingness. But because the Speed Force shares the same properties as electricity, they wove in the idea of the electrical circuit about how electricity will travel in a circuit. So Barry Allen running super fast basically turned him into a bolt of lightning, the same bolt of lightning that struck him and gave him Speed Force powers. So when Barry died in this moment, he became the bolt of lightning that originally gave him powers, completing the circuit on his life. Now here's where comics get really confusing, and this is why a lot of people don't read comics all the time, is because the New 52 got rid of all that stuff. That's a really awesome story about how Barry became the bolt of lightning that gave him powers, but because of the New 52, technically that didn't happen. But we're talking about comics. The TV show can pick and choose any storyline it wants to do. It doesn't have to do an exact copy of a storyline from the comics. Because the metaphor of that Barry Allen Crisis story is so amazing, what I'd like to see is that the last episode of The Flash ever, whether it's Season 7, Season 8, however long the Flash TV show ends up going, that Barry Allen sacrifices himself to save all of his friends, runs so fast that he becomes the bolt of lightning that struck him in the first episode, so that when you watch the Flash TV show, when you go back and watch it again, there's this nice loop where Barry gets struck by lightning, becomes the Flash, faces all these villains, makes all these friends, forms Team Flash, then is forced to make the ultimate sacrifice, but in doing so closes the loop on his life, ensuring that he will always become the Flash and be able to save the universe again. You can understand how the TV show might choose to whittle away some of the thousands of characters that were killed off during Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like they could just have a villain who threatens the multiverse where Barry sacrifices himself. It doesn't have to be the Anti-Monitor, but it'd be really cool if they could use that character. Anti-Monitor is way beyond New Genesis, Apocalypse, Darkseid, Highfather, so what I'd like to see is just to keep things relatable, keep the villains that Barry faces relatively human. So we're talking Cobalt Blue. I mean, a lot of this will depend on what the true story of Zoom is. They might already be using a lot of other beats from other speedsters. So there's maybe like one more speedster villain that they could do, like an amalgam of a couple other different Reverse Flashes. But beyond that, like season 4, season 5, they're gonna have to find a big bad like Gorilla Grodd who isn't a speedster, which is why I totally think if they can find a way to do it without spending all their money, Gorilla Grodd would be the big bad of a future season. But really, this video is just meant to explain why Crisis on Infinite Earths and Barry Allen's death during that is an awesome way to close the Flash. Use that type of cosmic villain as a big bad and a way for Barry to sacrifice himself and close the loop so that in the final moments of the very last episode of The Flash, whatever year that ends up coming in, he travels back to the very first moments of the pilot episode. Let me know in the comments, though, if they do a villain that is not a speedster in a future season, let me know who you want the big bad to be. Keep in mind that they'll probably have at least 7 seasons of The Flash, so there's a whole lot of big bads we're going to have to cycle through. They've already burned through a couple of the biggest ones, like Eobard Thawne, now the Hunter Zolomon Zoom, but there are plenty of names. What I might do in my next bonus video is explain some of the other versions of the Reverse Flash that they could do, some other storylines for big bads in future seasons. The really easy slam dunk that it's kind of cheesy, it depends on how desperate they get for villains, is they would do the Blue Flash, where Barry becomes an evil version of himself that travels back in time to try and kill him, to try and fix the past. They did that during the New 52. It was an okay storyline. I like the idea more than I like the execution in the comics. Like the idea that the future version of Barry Allen is so torn by the awful things that have happened because of the way he's used his powers that he feels his only solution is to go back in time and kill himself so that he never lives to damage all the people that he loves. Generally speaking, though, each season there's like some core idea, some core problem within himself that Barry's trying to fix. Now he's trying to find happiness this season, some really fundamental problem, and that's where the villain flows from that idea. When I should say, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is back. My video for that will post in the morning. And there is a new round of the DC giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. In case you guys didn't see everyone freaking out this morning, the Game of Thrones Red Band trailer dropped for Season 6. You can click here for my breakdown from that, and you can click here to learn about the difference between Zoom in the comics and Zoom on the TV show. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.